Hello, I'm Paul Smith from Maxïmo Park, and you're watching AMBY.
Hey everyone, it's Alicia from AMBY, and I would like to welcome you to my interview with Paul Smith, who not only happens to be my favorite lyricist, but the frontman to one of my favorite bands of all time, Maxïmo Park. Hello.
Hello there.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for your kind words.
Of course, very excited about this. I want to dive into Risk to Exist, your latest album release. Now it's been out for a little bit. How are you feeling about the record now that it's kind of been able to sit in?
Yeah, it feels unfortunately still relevant. A lot of the themes on it, I suppose, are politically driven by the news, I suppose, of the last couple of years, and that continues to proliferate. The audiences seem to get what the songs are about, which is one of the most important things. Our music is all about connecting with people, and it always has been, and it's always been emotionally driven music. So even though this new record is a little bit more, I suppose the horizons are broader in terms of the subject matter, it's still, it's still a very passionate record, and to see people engaging with that and perhaps coming to different understandings as we tour of the songs and what they might mean, that's also gratifying as somebody who's obviously, we've worked hard on the record, so to see people getting it and looking at us playing the songs, it feels good to get it out there, always, even nearly a year after it's come out, and a year after we recorded it, being back in North America where we recorded the record, it's nice to be here at the source of where we were recording.
The music has always been very open and honest, so what was the shift where you decided to go from the more romantic tracks to the politics?
I've always written about things that interest me, and I think that's all you can do. I think Leonard Cohen, who's one of my favourite lyricists, always said, how could I write from somebody else's perspective? Even though he's writing about spiritual things and, very wide subject matter, it's still things that he's interested in. And I watch a lot of news and I read a lot of newspapers and try and come to my own conclusions about the way that the world is, which we all should, hopefully. And so I think the songs are questions, and all of our songs are like that, from our first singles, even like Apply Some Pressure, it says, what happens when you lose everything? It's me asking questions of myself, asking questions of the world.
You start all over again.
Exactly. There are answers in there somewhere, but yes, even stuff like Our Velocity was written around the time of the military engagement in the Middle East, and these kind of things tap in to the songs. There's a lyric in that says, "Are you willing to resist for people you've never met?" And so there have been political statements within it, but more embedded. And I think this time, because the world has become so polarized,
theme.
Yeah, you just think, well, we need to stand up for what we believe in at all times, and in the music that felt like the way it was going. And when we were recording demos, I said to the rest of the guys, are you happy with this new direction? Should we sort of mix it up and have some songs that are less involved in this broad viewpoint? But everybody said, no, let's really focus on it and not dilute it. And it's a kind of a statement record that hopefully isn't preachy or anything like that. Again, it's a very human record. It's about solidarity and empathy, which are very human things, even though as a concept they're a little bit broader. It felt like the right time. And even if we never touch upon this subject matter again, which is unlikely given the world and the way that we work, even if we never did it again, at least we can say, well, this is what we were pretty open about what we stood for. There's solidarity with refugees in the record. There's in a song called The Hero, it's like a story of an immigrant, which was taken from a film in the 60s, which I was like, oh right, there's total parallels between what's happening now and this other completely different era. And so I feel like, okay, yeah, people know where we stand on things, and we can always play these songs, we can always touch upon on this kind of subject matter and not feel like we are unable to deal with it. I think earlier on in our career, I probably wouldn't have been able to write the lyrics that are on this record, I don't think I would have had the knowledge or the confidence in my own opinions. Perhaps it wasn't really something that was concerning us or me as a lyricist at the time. You know, we were writing the songs that we wrote, and we didn't know that they would have an audience outside of Newcastle or our friends. And so now, knowing that other people are going to hear it, it changes you ever so slightly. You feel like, okay, we've done that. We've provided people with these romantic songs, and there'll always be a thread of romanticism. I mean, this is a romantic record. It ends with a song called Alchemy that says, "In a world of selfishness and greed, you fulfill my every need." It's about the alchemy that goes on inside us when we are close to somebody. And so, yeah, the records will always have that, and I think it's nice to evolve and do different things, and then you can always dip back into that at various other points in the future.
Well, you mentioned how the record has a human element to it, and a lot of that does come from how it was recorded live in studio. A lot of the record or the songs that we hear are actually first takes. So is that just coming down to a time crunch, or do you guys just kind of have this down to a T?
We're pretty tight as a live band. You know, we've always enjoyed playing live, and I can say that because I'm just the singer. I just sing when the time comes. But the rest of the band, they're really tight. And even when I joined, they'd been a band for two years or something at university, while I was in other bands and playing guitar, not singing or anything like that. And so when I joined, they were already a good unit. And I think over the last couple of years, because we've got a different guy playing bass with us now, Paul Rafferty, who used to be in a band called Hot Club de Paris, who were very good, and we toured with them. He plays the bass now after Archer's, our original bassist, retired. And he's very flexible with the styles that he has, and so we know that if we want to write a funky song, we can write a funky song, and he'll be able to enhance it in his department. And I think over the last few years we've been really locked in to what we're doing, and when we play live it feels strong and dynamic, and so we wanted to capture that on a record. All the records up till now had been recorded and in a more layered process where we'd put extra bits on, extra bits here, lots of takes until we found the right one. And so in this scenario where you want to get that live sound, we rehearsed the new songs that we had over and over again before we came to Chicago to record. And we also knew that Tom Schick, who co-produced it with us, he gets a great live sound with Wilco and lots of other different bands. He's worked with people like Beck and Rufus Wainwright, things that are perhaps you wouldn't necessarily tie in with us. And we also got to work with Maxïmo Park from the band Low, who are one of my favourite bands of all time. And again, he'd worked with them, and we knew the sound as an engineer. You know, he really gets the sound. So yeah, all we had to do was be the best that we could be, and then he just pressed record and knew where to put the mics, and
it all worked out.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Well, there is definitely a very funky undertone throughout the whole album, and I know when it comes to your past records, you like looking through different eras of pop and kind of plucking out different influences. So where did that funkiness come from on this record?
It's a tough question. It's embedded into the music that we listen to. Bands like the Meters, James Brown, Funkadelic, all sorts of different bands come to mind. People like Prince, something like What Equals Love or Respond to the Feeling, two songs on the record. They remind me more of something like Prince, kind of 80s synthy sounds in there as well. And funnily enough, I don't think I've said this to anybody, but I listened to a lot of Haim before recording this record. You
can kind of hear it, where there's like the spaciness in between things.
Well, this is it, and we love that kind of organic yet modern approach. And I'm not sure whether any of the other guys really listened to them, but I was always listening to their first record when I was walking around, and I think that kind of rhythmic delivery, that da-da-da-dun-da-dun, kind of little, not just being melodic but also very rhythmic, that fed into some of the things that I was thinking about from a vocalist's point of view. And yeah, I mean, we've all listened to numerous different kinds of funky music, and Lucas likes a lot of house and techno music, which is a bit more rigid. And but yeah, there's an eclecticism that runs through the band, so that with each record, hopefully, we can come up with something different and not just do something completely different because there's five of us in the band and we all pull in different directions and we try and find this one point where we all overlap, and that ends up being the sound of the record. So Tom, for example, loves country music and old school country music, perhaps not so much of the modern stuff, but yeah, just that kind of simple storytelling and the raw sound of a country record by, I don't know, George Jones or Hank Williams, that kind of thing. But we wouldn't probably never do a straight country record because the rest of us would pull away from that, even though I like, I don't know, Gillian Welsh or somebody like that. You know, I like folk music as well, traditional, very quiet, sort of folky stuff. So, you know, those elements have definitely come into different recordings that we've done in the past. But yeah, in the end, it kind of it comes through, and it's still a pop record because even though we like all the different genres that we like, the one thing that we feel we're good at is writing a pop song, something that's ultra melodic, that's got a lot of hooks, and yeah, I think we've learned perhaps to put a bit more space in the songs. Our songs have always been very full of things and crammed, and that's part of our identity, and we go back to that all the time. But with this record, we wanted space because we record it live. Pretty much, there's no room for messing around with other things. It's quite an economic process.
Speaking to have a broad taste in music, you actually have a massive vinyl collection. You've said how you didn't want to admit it, but you've probably spent way too much time in record stores. So how big is this collection of yours?
I don't know really. It's kind of a wall in my house.
Is it?
Pretty much. Slightly embarrassing, really. I've wasted my life in some ways. But yeah, I've got like a huge wall of vinyl, and I've got loads of CDs as well. Before I could afford vinyl. Vinyl was always a little bit more expensive, and it's even more so now. And you know, that's what I spent my money on when I was growing up. I would not buy sweets, and when we got to university, I wouldn't buy alcohol. I'd just
straight to the record store.
Yeah, I'd just have a Coca-Cola, and everybody was like, "What's wrong with you? What, are you a miser?" And I was like, "I'm gonna buy two records tomorrow that I'm excited about." And I'm not so rigid these days with these things, but I still spend a fair amount of time and money in record shops. Even today, I've been looking. There's one a few.
It's a good
doors
street
down.
for that, yeah.
Yeah, and the secondhand books, and I've been looking for Criterion Collection DVD stuff. So yeah, when we're on tour, myself and especially Duncan as well, he's always looking for new vinyl. But yeah, I need to count it all at some point, just so that if my house goes up in flames, the insurance will just be like, "You didn't have all these records." And over the years, some of them have accumulated some value, and I would never sell them because they're just my records. But yeah, if I said to an insurance company, "Yes, I've got the coloured vinyl of Angel Olsen's last record, and it's, you know, that's £50 worth," they'd probably say, "What are you talking about?" Mm-hmm. So at some point, it would, if we don't have records to make or a tour to do, I'll spend a weekend or something just typing stuff into a computer just to know what I've got, which it sounds a bit geeky now that I mention it, but yeah, it's nice.
You still know.
Yeah,
you must wonder a little bit, right?
I do wonder. I probably should have spent my money in other places. If you actually add up how much money I've spent, I dread to think of it.
Well, since you are trying to find a lot of this stuff on the road, books, vinyl, is that a pain to travel with? I imagine it would be. Yeah,
the further you go, the more difficult it is to take it back. So again, I've been trying to ration myself while I'm here. I've got a kind of limit in terms of the weight that you can take back and that sort of thing. But luckily in the UK and in Europe we use a tour bus. So at the end of the tour, I just get all my stuff off the bus, put it in a taxi, go home. It's 5 minutes of hauling stuff up my street to get it into my house. But the US and Canada, it's a little bit more irritating because I know that I have to be conscious. And not that I spend loads and loads of money, but it's nice to see a bargain. For example, today I saw Proto Martyr's album from, it's like 3 albums ago, and I've got it on MP3. But I thought, it would be nice to have it on vinyl.
Let's put it up on the wall.
And it's cheap. It's a second-hand record. But I also don't really need it. It's like, I'm in Canada, so I've looked for Joni Mitchell records that, again, I've got them on CD, and it'd be just nice to have those original versions because I love Joni Mitchell. But then I love a lot of stuff, so it doesn't make sense to use
dangerous.
that. Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Well, you're now touring North America, as you mentioned, and one of the biggest questions we had going into this interview, because we know that you do a lot of crazy jumps on stage, splits, cannot wait for that tonight, but has anything ever ripped? Do you ever ripped pants trying to do that?
Oh yeah.
You have?
Yeah, I've ripped my latest suit, my stage suit in Germany, and it was like a huge festival, Hurricane and Southside, and you go from one place to the next, and it's like the same bill travels to one side of Germany and back. And yeah, I was hiding behind the microphone stand, which is obviously a very slender piece of equipment.
You have to have that positioning down.
Yeah. So that did not work out too well. But I won't go into too much detail, but it could have been a bigger rip. But yeah, in the past I had to get suits reinforced. I had a tailor for a while. We were riding high, and so I could afford some tailored suits, and he reinforced things because I went back and I said, look, I've ripped the suit, so you had to put a few extra stitches in, and these days I'm not so hell for leather. I used to jump off all sorts of things, and it's probably not a wise thing to do. The older you get, the more you realise how you could probably do yourself some damage. So it's a little bit more restrained now, and always stay age appropriate on stage. That's my advice to all bands.
That's a good tip. Well, one of the beautiful things about being in a band is the traveling. But is there anywhere you would love to take Maxïmo Park that you have yet to perform? Where's left?
Well, we played Mexico for the first time a few weeks ago at a festival, so that was great to tick that off. I'd like to go to Chile because we wrote a song inspired by Chilean writer Roberto Bolaño, a song called I Recognize the Light, and it also references Mexico City because he lived there, and I saw a film by a guy called Mark Cousins, and that fed into this song. And the song says, I've never been to Mexico City, but I recognize the light, and I've never been to Santiago, its history keeps me up at night. Because Bolaño, the writer, talked a lot about the political upheaval in the mid-70s, and I just would love to go and learn a bit more and maybe go to some of those places that are in the books. For example, I'm reading this book, The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño at the moment, which is set in Mexico City in the 70s. And when we were there a few weeks ago, I went to one of the cafes that's mentioned in the book. It's not mentioned by name, but I looked at an interview with his translator and found out what the real one was. It's called... oh God, I've forgotten now.
Did it live up to its expectations?
It did. It was great because it was like a time capsule. Nobody had tried to make it hip. It was just this 70s kind of beige, coffee-coloured cafe, and they grind their own coffee there. There's this machine in the window in the front, and it was just lots of old people chatting, and just a very diverse group of people. And I guess nobody's that interested in unearthing restaurants from books by Roberto Bolaño. Perhaps in the younger generation, perhaps it's just
I found the one who is
maybe, but I'm not so young either anymore. But yeah, that was great. I don't know really. New Zealand, we've never been there. We've been to Australia a few times, but just the landscapes of these places, it would be nice to go along and just sample some of that different
culture.
Geographic planes and different cultures. But we've been to so many places that blow my mind. Places like Japan, or other places in South America. We went to Sao Paulo and Buenos Aires, and so we've been to a lot of places that I would have said I'd love to go there. So the only other places are probably a bit more far flung. Yeah.
Well, I remember seeing Maxïmo Park for the first time when I was a lot younger and just absolutely loving the aesthetic, especially with the suits. It really stood out to me because I did not see many bands dressed like that. I absolutely loved it. When you look back at older fashion fads that you went through, does anything stick out to you that you may be embarrassed of before you did that?
All of it. I'm having a bad fashion life, but the best thing to do is, from my point of view, is to probably just stick to something, change it ever so slightly, and tweak it. And then it's like Patti Smith. You've got a white shirt, a sort of blouse, dark sort of skinny jeans, and that's Patti Smith. And so this is me, unfortunately. Put a hat and a suit on, and then I'm in Maxïmo Park, and it makes life a little bit easier, even though, it's also, I've made a rod for my own back. Now people expect high kicking, suit wearing.
Have you met people who not had the hat on and they're like, why don't you have it, or asked about it?
Nobody recognizes me, so
Really?
it's okay. Yeah, it avoids awkward conversations.
Well, just to wrap things up, I do want to bring it to the fans. Is there anything you want to say to all of those who will be viewing?
Thank you for sticking with us, and if you've never heard our music, hopefully you will now, and it'll be something that you listen to in the future and hold close to your heart. That is the intention behind our band. It's to move people and affect them for 3 minutes of a song or 45 minutes of an album, and that's about it really. All the rest of it, including the way I dress, is all the trimmings. The music is the core of what we're all about, and yeah, thanks for watching.
I can vouch that Maxïmo Park are an incredible band. They've been in my life for more than half of my life. Just kind of crazy to think about. So it was an absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
And remember, to everybody viewing, you can visit us at musicblogger.com for all exclusive interviews, features, videos, and so much more. See ya.